now listening to the Paul McGUIRE Report. This is Paul McGUIRE. On today's program. Again, a deep dive into the mystery of the dollar, of our currency, and with an emphasis on the day the dollar died, which is the title of a book I wrote a number of years ago, where I'm getting a lot of this material from. I've been researching this off and on, well, really off and on since college, when I went up to the professor who was the main professor of the Department of Economics at the University of Missouri. And so economics was a required course. I had to take X amount of hours in economics. And I remember sitting in a large auditorium, which was the classroom, with about 500 students. And the economic professor gave his introductory speech, which, quite frankly, at that time, I didn't really understand. I didn't understand it. Of course, what I didn't know back then is that nobody else understood it either. They were all faking it. And I'm not sure if the professor, the economics professor himself, whether he really understood the full dimension of what the money system is all about in America, around the world, and going back to ancient Babylon and ancient Sumeria. I'm not sure he got it. Now, one of the things that, happened is I was sitting in the chair in the auditorium listening to the economics professor talk about economics, not really getting it. Everybody around me was faking like they were getting it. And so by chance, or I seized the opportunity, whatever you want to call it, the professor happened to be exiting the large classroom near where I was sitting. So I stood up and casually made sure that as he was exiting, that I would non-intrusively strike up a conversation with him, which he seemed glad to do. I guess he wanted to start off the year with good relationships between himself and all of his students. So he was very polite, but I simply, to make a long story short, we only talked for about 15, 20 minutes max. I said to him, I hope during your course, I'll be able to walk away with a far deeper understanding as to what exactly money is. I mean, I said it with a little bit more polish to the professor, but I wanted to know what money was. Now, I guarantee you that nobody in the class knew. Oh, they knew the official answer. Money is a unit of exchange, blah, 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 blah. But that's not knowing what money is. See, instinctually, just like you, instinctually, in your gut, in your inner man or inner woman, you're perplexed and you're curious, and from the professor's presentation, from the conversations with the other students, that something is amiss, something is out of balance. There's something you're not being told. And see, it always bugs me when people make a presentation and instead of revealing something to me, they're intentionally or unintentionally or whatever, they're being elusive. And they're hiding. You get the sense that they're hiding something. So as the course went on, I learned, like every other student, if you want to pass economics, which you definitely do because you don't want to have to take it over again, I knew what I had to know to take the test, to pass the test, to get my credits in economics. But I didn't walk away from the economics class with any revelation, with any deep understanding as to really what money is. What is money? That's what I said to the professor. What is money? And I've heard the standard answers a million times, probably like you have. But you go up to the average person, you go up to the average financial planner, you go up to the average banker, and if you probe and ask them to tell you what is money, they can't tell you. All they know is what they need to know to satisfy their bank. All they know is what they need to know to satisfy their investment company that they work for. So they know the bullet points that are necessary to know so that they can sell, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, or whatever to you. And every investment company has a different or sometimes a similar product line that they're pitching, because when push comes to shove and you get right down to it, like so many businesses that are not even supposed to be businesses, they make their money, they make their commission if they push a particular financial product. So you know the short-term answer to what is money, but they don't know what money is, and they can't tell you what's going to happen a year from now, or they can't project on the basis of trends and economic upheaval and all kinds of things happening in our world. They can't, or very few of them, can guide you and shelter you with money. So we're going to dive into what is money. I mean, not skirt around it, get right into a disclosure of what the heck money is. This is the Paul McGuire Report. I'm Paul McGuire. Visit paulmcguire.us. We'll be back in just a moment. You are listening to the Paul McGuire Report. I'm Paul McGuire. So I wrote this book, The Day the Dollar Died, in 2009. And it answers the questions that most people want to know about money and related topics, because money is connected to the elite, the occult elite, the globalist elite, ancient Babylon, Atlantis, the Federal Reserve System, and things of that nature. So if you're not going to talk about any of those other very important subjects, then you've really just fed your students or whatever with a lot of social engineering. You haven't educated them, you've dumbed them down. Okay, so we were talking about the fact on a recent Paul McGuire report that the Federal Reserve System is essentially not a legal system of control over our money supply. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights spell out the fact that we, the people of the United States of America, the citizens of the United States of America, and our elected officials are supposed to be the ones in control of the money supply. That means in control of interest rates, like how high an interest rate, how low an interest rate, how low an interest rate or how high an interest rate on, for example, your mortgage, car payments, an adjustable rate mortgage, or like a fixed mortgage, and all the other things. And according to our founding fathers, we the people, not some group of international, that means foreign, not some group of mysterious international banker billionaires and trillionaires who secretly, and this is what they did, they hijacked our money supply. That's right, they hijacked our money supply. And I've been talking about this for 35 years plus. And you will find my cover, The Day the Dollar Died, all over the internet on all kinds of different people's websites, because it's a picture of a girl with a barcode on her forehead, and it's a picture that when you see it, people are intrigued. Well, every time I turn around, it's not even intentional, but this picture has been ripped off from the cover of my book, and they always cut out my name, Paul McGuire, and they usually just steal the artwork. Sometimes they steal the artwork and the title. Okay, so, you know, uh, I don't mind when people use my stuff for resources, but it would be more ethical if they at least credited me, the book, or whatever. That would be the ethical thing to do. Okay, so let's get back into what happened. So we have just 10 primary stockholders in the Federal Reserve System, or in the Federal Reserve banking system. Now, most of this information that I'm going to give you comes right out of my book, The Day the Dollar Died, which you should buy, by the way. I also talk about the microchip implant. in a book after this, because we are going to move in our lifetime from a paper currency to a wireless nanochip currency, where all financial transactions will occur on a wireless basis using computers, electromagnetic frequencies, satellites, and so on and so forth. So remember, what's the big battle that's going on in the world today? I address again with the title of another book that I wrote called not the Day the Dollar Died. We're reading out of that now, but the greatest battle for the hearts and minds of mankind in the history of the world. That is the central warfare we're involved in, whether we like it or not. In addition, within that central warfare, there's a warfare over economics, money, power, the control of money, the control of people, the control of assets. So remember, there's a conspiracy going on. Yeah, the word is conspiracy. I mean, what else are you going to call it? It is a conspiracy. It's a bunch of people with devious motives, or let's say allegedly devious motives, conspiring to seize control of the money supply and you. And I'll give you, and who they are is they are the international bankers. So the same people, the same international banking families of trillionaires and billionaires that seized control of the world banking system and seized control of the American banking system through the Federal Reserve banking system, that same group of conspirators are the same men, women, and families behind the World Economic Forum's Great Reset, who are right now, as we speak, fast-tracking a new world order based on the model of the ancient mystery Babylon New World Order at the time of the Tower of Babel. And we read that these primary stockholders, these are the people that controlled both sides of the war during World War I, during World War II, and now with many of them have financial interests in World War III. So let's name the names, because people always want to know the names. Allegedly, and I'm saying allegedly for obvious reasons. The Rothschild family of London. Most people don't know that in the city of London, there are two entirely different cities. Let me repeat that again. Most people, maybe 100% of the people that you will meet and encounter in life, have no clue that when we talk about the city of London, there are in actuality two cities of London. There's the larger, more exterior city of London with the giant Ferris wheel structures and the Big Ben clock, and I don't know the name of that river in London, but you've seen it. And so that where the people live, and this larger city of London. Now, in the inner circle of this larger city of London, there is a secretive, highly fortified inner circle or inner city of London. So there's two city of Londons. The one that all the tourists know, the one you see on TV, that's one city of London. But the more powerful city of London is the secretive inner city of London, which is heavily armed, has guard towers and security everywhere. There are golden fixtures and spirals that have bright red dragons on them. Remember, a dragon is a symbol of Satan. It's also a symbol of the Rothschild family. And in this inner city of London, is controlled by the London bankers, the Rothschilds. The international bankers have their banks and headquarters in this elite city of London inside the city of London. And it's a very high security, modern, clean place that, bums and drug addicts and everything else, they're not allowed in the inner city of London. This is for the elite. And it's the control center of the world, this inner city of London. Okay, so it's these same international bankers in the city of London, the financial city of London, like the Rothschilds in London, and we're talking about the inner city of London, the Rothschild family in Berlin, Germany, the Lazard brothers in Paris, France, Israel Seif in Italy, Kuhn Loeb Company in Germany, the Warburg family in Amsterdam, the Warburgs in Hamburg, Germany, Lehman Brothers in New York, Goldman Sachs in New York, and yes, the Rockefellers in New York. And so these international banking families, the strategy is very simple. The way they take over any given nation, and they've taken over most of the nations in the world, and they've taken over, I believe, all of the European nations have been taken over by these international bankers. So the Rothschild elite, their strategy for takeover is very simple. They don't use military conquest. They don't come out in the open and do it right in front of your face. They take over nations covertly, and this is how they do it. Instead of having what America originally had before they took over our money system, all the financial interests in Europe and the European nations at one time, the European nations, the European wealthy families, the European governments, all banked in independent or government-owned banks. So France did their financial business in the French banks. The Germans did their financial business in the German banks. And once upon a time, the British uh, people and the British government did their business with the British banks, and so on and so forth. Now, the Rothschild covert financial warfare goes like this. They turned down the power, they shut down the power radically of all these different powerful banks. They consolidate all the power and finances into what were originally called the Rothschild banks, or they were referred to as the central banks. Remember that term, central banks. A central bank is a Rothschild elite bank in any given nation. It's called a central bank because the international bankers force the people and the governments through economic pressure to divest themselves from all these different banks, including government-owned banks, and they consolidate all their money and wealth in what is called the central bank. But remember the all-important fact surrounding the central bank. The all-important fact surrounding the central bank is that the central bank is owned lock, stock, and barrel by the Rothschilds, or these international banking families. So boom, Great Britain, London, etc., all the banks were taken over by a central bank. So you didn't have all these different banks, no more diverse banking institutions. It's all consolidated in a central bank. And the same thing happened in Italy and France and Germany and America and so on and so forth. Now, this enabled, because Rothschild said with his own mouth that the way you take over a nation, you don't waste your time politically attempting to take over a nation. You take over a nation when you take over its monetary supply. That's what Rothschild said. So in America, we got wind of how nasty the business of central banks is. We got wind of how nasty a business it was. It was just a covert mechanism, financial mechanism, which allowed the international banking families, the globalist elite, like Rockefeller families, to enrich themselves, because when they set themselves up as the master controllers of the monetary system of any given nation, they also opened up all the pipelines for the international banking families like Rockefeller to generate enormous wealth. Now, how is it that they generate enormous wealth? Because they operate not according to biblical principles. The Rothschilds and others operate according to occultic principles. They use, if you will, money magic that goes all the way back to ancient Babylon, the Mystery Babylon religion, which printed the world's first currency and created the world's first one world economic system. So the way money magic works is it doesn't work. And this is why the professor of economics at the University of Missouri couldn't give me a straight answer regarding what is money. I had to find out what I'm sharing with you now. I've written numerous books on this. I've been interviewed on the biggest financial news networks in the world and the nation in the golden years of Fox News. I was constantly on all the Fox News Network business shows debating leading economic experts. Now, who am I, for crying out loud? Who am I to be debating with these, the publisher and editor of the Wall Street Journal? And I could go down, it's a who's who of money. And I was always debating them. And ironically, I was winning the debates, which was amusing to me when I think of my lineage going back to asking the question to the professor of economics at the University of Missouri when I asked him what is money. He couldn't give me the answer I'm giving to you now. And when I would go on Fox or CNN or the other business channels, at that time, they had massive audiences. That's no longer the case. But I had to find the stuff that I'm talking to you about. I had to go out and find this by myself, because this is part of the secret invisible power structure that is running our world. And it's an open secret. Anybody can discover it, but very few make the effort to discover it. So here's there's many primary principles that these occult-based globalist elite international banking families operate on. One is they print money from nothing. Now, this is an occultic principle. Printing money from nothing is like taking ordinary worthless rock or mud, and when you gather ordinary worthless mud and rocks, you become a wizard. You perform alchemical magic upon the worthless materials, and you call it a philosopher's stone because you use this occult magic to turn the worthless materials into gold. You take a worthless rock and you transform it into gold. That's called money magic. That goes back to ancient Babylon and beforehand. That is the nature of alchemical magic. Many people that you talk to, including the so-called experts, they don't have a clue as to what is happening in our world and nation today, because they don't even have the most superficial or minimal understanding of the way our financial system and the global financial system works, because it works on a non-linear quantum physics, if you will, multidimensional manner in which they employ alchemical magic and money magic. And one primary example of money magic and alchemical magic is when you take a worthless substance, which was then called the philosopher's stone in European cultures hundreds of years ago, and through alchemical magic, you transform it into gold. That's called money magic. Now, when you're printing money from nothing, you are employing alchemical magic. So if you want to understand the money system in America and around the world, you have to understand, there's no way to circumvent this. You have to understand alchemical magic and the money system. Apart from understanding alchemical magic and the money system, you cannot understand our money system. And that's why Mystery Babylon, wake up, man, wake up. Mystery Babylon, why is Mystery Babylon called Mystery Babylon? Why is it a mystery? Because Mystery Babylon refers to a global world system of money, government, power, economics, and the occult and the occultic monetary system. This is all born out of the Mystery Babylon religions and what the book of Revelation refers to as Mystery Babylon. Why? Because Mystery Babylon is a complete mystery to outsiders. Only the adept, only those initiated into secret societies through rituals are able to understand the secrets of the monetary system and the other secrets of control that the globalist occult elite employ to control and dominate mankind. And so, why is printing money from nothing an example of alchemical magic? Because it defies traditional economic principles. It's traditional economic principles flipped upside down and put in reverse. When our dollar bill in America was first created with the founding of America and the printing of our currency, back in the days when we, the people, and our so-called elected representatives controlled the economic money system, what did we control? How was it controlled by the elite? Okay, this is very simple. By the way, what I'm doing now in the studio, and I'm talking to you, and you know what I'm talking about, could have been done by any of my professors of economics at the University of Missouri. If you're going to truly answer for your students what is money, and not just socially engineer them into oblivion, then of course you would pull out a dollar bill and start with the basics. Money 101. That's what I'm doing right now. You can hear me snap a paper dollar. It says, now here's the magic words of alchemical magic. Federal Reserve Note. The United States of America. Now, many of you may have heard about what I'm talking to you about. Many of you have not, or you need to understand it. I hope that with this fast presentation to you, I will help open your eyes to the money system, because nobody opened my eyes at the university level. I had to go dig for it myself. Like most of the knowledge that I've acquired, I had to dig for it the old-fashioned way. Nobody gave me the knowledge. I had to fight for it, and you're going to have to fight for it too. Okay, so the answers are right on our US dollar bill. First of all, on the back of the US dollar bill, and I've said this many times, we have all these occult symbols like the pyramid with the all-seeing eye of Lucifer on it, and the words, so anybody can read the words from Latin, Novus Order Seclorum, which means New Order of the Ages or New World Order. So right on the dollar bill, the international bankers are telling you that this paper monetary instrument is controlled by the people that control the New World Order. And then on the same side of the back of the dollar, on the right-hand side, we see not an eagle bird, as many people think. We see a phoenix. The phoenix represents the legendary occult bird that's burned up and rises from the ashes. The phoenix represents a symbolic representation of the New World Order. And Sir Francis Bacon chose for the phoenix to be the symbol, one of the symbols of America, because he believed that America would become the head of the New World Order. Okay, so in order to understand our monetary system, when America was first formed, our dollar bills, or whatever numerical amount the paper currency represented, a $100 bill or whatever, none of them were printed with these words on the very top of the front of the dollar bill. In fact, the first thing you will read when you look at a dollar bill of any denomination, above the head of George Washington, above the words the United States of America, the very first thing you will read are these three important words: Federal Reserve Note. This is telling you that this piece of paper, is worth, listen to me really carefully, this piece of paper that we call money is worth absolutely nothing. Zero, nada. That's the secret of alchemical magic. It's worth absolutely nothing. Now, in the beginning of America, it didn't used to say Federal Reserve Note. In the early days of our monetary system, you could go to a bank, and instantly, the bank was required by law in the founding of America, the bank had to have gold or precious jewels in its vault as a promise to anybody who wanted to redeem their paper money. They could do it instantly, and they could convert their paper money instantly into gold, according to the numerical denomination of whatever dollar bill it was. So in the early days of America, when our government was first founded after the 1776 American Revolution, you didn't have this Federal Reserve note. That's a whole different kind of money. They did the old switcheroo. That's an old-fashioned word, but the Federal Reserve is old-fashioned. They did the old switcheroo, and every one of you know what the old switcheroo is. It's bait and switch. It's bait and switch. It's alchemical magic. It's lying. It's deception. It's Luciferian. So the Federal Reserve in 1913 took over the monetary system and got rid of all the paper currency, where you could, once upon a time in America, you could go to your local bank and instantaneously convert whatever your money was into gold or silver, and it was worth something. When they and the globalist bankers knew exactly what they were doing when they pulled off this alleged great heist. And so what they did is they printed these new dollars which say Federal Reserve note. Now, all that means is every dollar you hold in your hand today, because of the Federal Reserve, every dollar you hold in your hand is worthless. It has zero value. It's nothing more than an IOU. It's a promissory note between the banks and the Federal Reserve System and you. So they don't have to have money or gold to pay you if you want to exchange your paper dollars for money. They don't have to do that quickly. They don't have to do it quickly at all. It's a Federal Reserve note. It's an IOU, because they know, and you should know, that this dollar that I'm holding in my hand is worth nothing. Even if it was a $1,000 bill, it's worth nothing. Or a $500 bill, it's worth nothing. It's just a bunch of promissory notes up until the time you exchange it at a bank and go through whatever process is necessary to and they don't like to give you gold for your money, believe me. Good luck with that. Okay, so this is alchemical magic, because this is a worthless piece of paper. It's a worthless piece of paper. In and of itself, it has no value. That's why it says on the very top of the dollar, Federal Reserve note. It's an IOU note, or a promissory note, where you can theoretically take it to a bank and cash it in for gold. But what they like you to do is to keep it inside the financial system. Now, the problem with that is this piece of paper that I have in my hands. Let's make this understanding as simple as possible. I'm going to explain this to you with such simplicity that every single one of you listening, no matter how much of a problem you may have had, and you could look, I'm not insulting your intelligence. You could be a really sharp person and very knowledgeable in a lot of areas and very proficient in a lot of areas, and still not really understand the money system. The money system is designed deliberately to be confusing. It's order out of chaos. The truth of it is hidden behind the smoke and mirrors of chaos. So, this is why the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, and the banking families take over nations so quickly. So let's make this as simple as possible. Let's go back in our mind's imagination to, let's say, around 6 months before the COVID epidemic broke out. Okay, remember those days? Isolation, wearing masks, vaccinations, all kinds of weird stuff, okay? The COVID pandemic had a very negative impact on our economy and on your money and everybody's money. It was very negative to our economic system in every nation. So what happened was our government does what all governments do that sign away their souls to the devil in a pact. When you make a deal with the devil, you're going to pay for it. Now, of course, I'm just talking about allegedly they made a deal with the devil and let you take it from there. But let's just spell it out very simply. So remember, they print money from nothing. So there's no risk. If you're an international banker, you essentially don't have any risk in printing money from nothing. You just get richer and richer and richer and richer and richer because you don't have to spend any money or risk anything to increase your wealth. Got it? So the other thing, the Federal Reserves in all governments and oftentimes national governments like Nazi Germany. Remember the World War II pictures in black and white of people in Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler? They would go with wheelbarrows filled with cash, German marks, because the German dollar is called a mark. And their money supply had become so inflated, which means their money supply had lost its value to such an extent that if a person wanted just one loaf of bread, it would cost them an entire wheelbarrow filled with German marks or German money piled high. So the money had become so inflated in Nazi Germany that in order to feed your family, in order just to buy a loaf of bread, you would have to go to the bank or the store with a wheelbarrow filled with German dollars, which are called German marks. That's what inflation does. It robs the value out of your money. So the COVID epidemic, pandemic, whatever you want to call it, is inflated our dollar because businesses shut down right and left, especially independent businesses. Ministries shut down right and left. It was a hit on our economy. And so what always happens and why the money gets inflated is the government, in this case in America, the US government, goes to the Federal Reserve banks because now under the Federal Reserve System, the US government no longer possesses or owns any money of its own. It's totally in debt to the Federal Reserve, which has all the control of the money. So, one of the other ways the Federal Reserve makes money is it prints money from nothing, and then it makes loans available to you, the middle class, the working class, the lower class. It makes loans to you, and it loves to make loans to governments and militaries and the US government. So what happened is our economy was ready to destabilize during COVID, especially in the beginning. And we may see another round two of this. So our government goes to the Federal Reserve and asks them to give them a loan. The Federal Reserve, which is Rothschild and people like that, they loan the American government and the American people, they loan hundreds of millions of dollars. They loan billions of dollars. And now we have a national debt that's in the trillions of dollars. And who do we owe it to? We owe it to the international. Here's the secret. We owe it to the international bankers who are called the Federal Reserve. We are in debt. The Bible says the borrower is a slave to the lender. The U.S. government and we, the people, have become the borrowers, and we have become slaves to the lender, which is the Federal Reserve banking system. So they loan out money and they make money by charging big interest rates. And when you're loaning the American government and the American people and the British people and the Italian people and the French people as international bankers, when you're loaning money to the tune of trillions of dollars, you are making mega profits through the interest you're charging, and you play with that interest rate. You raise that interest rate and you squeeze the American people like a lemon till there's no drop left in it. You choke off the air supply of the average American citizen by suffocating him or her in debt that never gets paid, which is a way of making you covertly a slave. And so that's the Federal Reserve. So now this dollar bill, and I'm going to give you the Paul McGUIRE estimate, and I think I'm pretty accurate. Government sources, economic sources try to tell you that the American dollar has lost, about 35%, maybe 40% of its value. That's BS. Sorry. That's baloney. That's baloney. This dollar, I'll give you my estimate, and it comes from shopping, it comes from looking at the price of cars or looking at the price of anything. I'll bet you anything that a real honest economic evaluation of the worth or value of the dollar is it's now worth 50% less than it was worth before COVID pandemic. So you're trying to live, pay a mortgage, pay your rent, pay car payment, pay insurance, pay for food, pay for gasoline. The list never ends of what you got to pay for. And now you're trying to pay for it, but you're paying for it on inflated dollars, funny money. And so it's much harder to make money when the money you make is worth half of what it used to be worth. I mean, all I got to do is shop at the grocery store, which I did yesterday, I believe. And man, I'm not buying a whole lot of expensive stuff. And I'm not buying for a whole lot of people. And it's $400 or $500. But see, I have a memory. I remember that what I used to pay $200 for, or $250 for, to get groceries. I remember very clearly seeing the electronic display at the cash register hit around $200, $250 before the COVID pandemic. But now, buying the same food items in the same quantity, it's costing me $400, $450, $498, $526. And you're experiencing it too. It's because the value of your money has been artificially rigged. And who did that? Well, the international bankers who controlled the monetary system. We don't control it. And you can go back to 1913. They passed a bill in Congress. Two bills. One was passed through the Democratic Party under one kind of name for a Federal Reserve, and the other was passed through the Republican Party using a different name for the Federal Reserve. This was designed on purpose to fool the people. And that's when, in 1913, that the Federal Reserve Act was passed. And all over the world, a new world order began to rise and control everything. And this is going to take us right into Bible prophecy, where a one world government, a one world economic system, and a one world religion is going to rise. And you're standing right in the middle of it. So, this gives the power and the control of the media, of big pharma, of big food, of every industry, of medicine, of economics, of science, of education. It's all under the control of the international bankers who operate on an occultic belief system. And, well, let me read you what President Woodrow Wilson said at the time of the passing of the Federal Reserve from my book, The Day the Dollar Died. President Woodrow Wilson, after he signed the Federal Reserve Act in 1913, said, "I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is controlled by its system of credit. Our system of credit is concentrated in the hands of a few men. Growth of the nation, therefore, and all of our activities are in the hands of a few men. We have come to be one of the worst ruled, one of the most completely controlled and dominated governments in the civilized world. No longer a government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and the duress of a small group of dominant men. The international bankers, the globalist elite, the trillionaire, billionaire families." And Wilson, president at that time, was blowing the whistle. Where were Christians? They were asleep. Where are Christians today? They're waking up slowly. I mean, how long does it take you to get out of bed? We're talking about from 1913 until now. the financial changes in America have been, there's hardly any, there's a very relatively small percentage of independent family-owned businesses left. Independent businesses started by entrepreneurs represents now only a small percentage of our economy. Everything has turned into giant globalist conglomerates where they pay people essentially minimum wage. The workers can't get wealthy. They just work for these globalist corporations. That's what Woodrow Wilson was talking about. So you got to wake up. You got to wake up, because if you say you love the Lord, then prove it. If you say you love the Lord and then you look in the eyes of your children and you do nothing as they're being marched into a form of economic globalist slavery, and that's exactly what's happening. That's exactly what the Great Reset is. It's just one more example of satanic lies and deceit and alchemical magic. So, we're on the precipice of another financial crisis. You know what? Since I've been born, as far back as I can remember as a child and all through my years as an adult, I remember it's been, and you probably remember it too, it's been one financial crisis after another. It's like a roller coaster ride. And guess what? How many of those financial crises do you honestly think were artificially created financial crises? Do you really believe the financial crises are due to random chance events in America and around the world? Is that what's causing the financial crises? Look what's happening. Open your eyes to the news media. This government agency, USAID, apparently, allegedly, is a piggy bank for intelligence agencies, and they use it for, people have said, they've alleged it's a money laundering operation which allows secretive government agencies to control governments and populations all around the world through a deceptive strategy. And you got gigantic office buildings, and there's nobody working in them. Or you have gigantic office buildings, and it's being populated by people who work from home or haven't been into the office in 6 months or a year, because the whole thing has been corrupted. All right. What's the end game? I've been warning you about this in my books and millions of people through media interviews for decades. And we've reached a lot of people. We've opened the eyes of a lot of people. But we're up against a powerful adversary. So, I'm going to read you something else from my book, The Day the Dollar Died, and I hope you pay attention. The current financial crisis is an orchestrated event, and people in the highest places of media and government know this. The purpose is to increase the power and wealth of the international bankers. Now, when I went up to my economics professor at the University of Missouri on the first day of class and asked him, what is money? Did I get a real disclosure of what money was? Did he tell me that the purpose of our monetary system is to increase the power and wealth of the international bankers? No, he's not going to tell me that. He's going to dumb me down like all the other 500 students and socially engineer me so I'm like a zombie. And that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes. So, again, I'll read to you from my book, The Day the Dollar Died, which you can get at paulmcguire.us. The books are at a special discount. You ought to take advantage of it at paulmcguire.us. Let me read you from The Day the Dollar Died. The CFR plan, or the Council on Foreign Relations plan, that's a globalist think tank started by Rockefeller, will lead to dictatorship and a loss of freedoms by the people, in the same way that the Communist Revolution, which promised a workers' paradise, led to bloody slaughter of over 100 million people worldwide. The French Revolution, built on the principles of the Illumined Enlightenment, which was the philosophical wave that preceded communism, led to a bloody revolution where people were beheaded in the streets, and a topless woman was paraded through the streets of Paris on a horse called the Goddess of Reason. Every revolution in the history of the world was built on humanism and the rejection of Judeo-Christian principles. Always, this has produced bloodshed and totalitarianism. It is only the American Revolution, built on the foundation of Christian principles, that has produced freedom and unparalleled prosperity for millions. Now, I was standing in Paris. I was speaking to over 25,000 people at a Christian French church in Paris, France. And then I went around shooting video and stuff. I was walking on the streets of Paris, and one of the church members was assigned to kind of give me a insider's tour, which he did. But I could see things that he had no idea were there. I mean, he knew the geographic address of the sites. I mean, like the road where Princess Diana was allegedly killed or died in an auto accident. I mean, he could show me that. He could show me many places that were famous. But what I showed him and what I write to you about in my books is exactly what all this architecture, what the symbols on the buildings actually meant. You see, I was able to take him in for a deep dive into the secret occult truths of Paris and the French Revolution. So he walked me to one place very prominently in one of the main squares, a very historical place where many of the activities of the French Revolution took place. And I immediately noticed, because I had been studying occultic symbols for a long time, that he said, Paul, where you're standing is the exact place that all the guillotines were placed. And during the French Revolution, Paul, where you're standing right now, the guillotines were chopping off the heads of thousands of people, and they were especially chopping off the heads of clergymen and ministers and Christians. They were being beheaded in a larger percentage than any other group. So as I was standing on the exact spot where, hundreds of years earlier, the French Revolution occurred and they were beheading people in the guillotines, as I looked carefully at the architecture embedded into the street and promenade where the guillotines were, as I saw the symbolic statues and buildings all around me that were packed with occultic symbols, I noticed that if you stood where I was standing, on the exact place where a blood sacrifice, an occultic blood sacrifice, was being conducted by the French revolutionaries, and this blood sacrifice consisted of Christian ministers and Christians being beheaded on guillotines by the thousands. And I was standing on the exact spot of the blood sacrifice. And then as I looked in terms of geography and where my feet were standing, I simply focused my attention on a straight line from where the blood sacrifice was to a kind of large marble rectangular square statue base, and placed upon that giant statue base was a giant pyramid statue. It was a statue of a giant pyramid with occult lettering. Now this, and the all-seeing eye of Lucifer. So this was not accidental. As you stand on the place of blood sacrifice of the French Revolution, and then you visually focus your eyes and attention on where this blood trail takes you to, your eyes will encounter a elevated occult pyramid statue. So it's not an accident that the French Revolution embodied the Mystery Babylon occult pyramidical structure in plain view. You just have to know what the symbols mean. And so the French Revolution was the mother of the communist revolutions, because the French Revolution was rooted and grounded in Satanism and atheism. Now, When you go back to December 23rd, 1961, I'm reading from the day the dollar died. That's way back in 1961. A columnist, Edith Kermit Roosevelt, the granddaughter of President Theodore Roosevelt, wrote in the Indianapolis News paper that the Council on Foreign Relations, the CFR, is about the gradual surrender of the United States sovereignty to the United Nations. So Christians fought, screamed, kicked, went into denial, and absolutely steadfastly refused to observe the truth that was burning right in front of their eyes. Secular people were warning the church and Christians over and over again where this globalist game plan was going to take us. And the granddaughter of President Theodore Roosevelt, a respected newspaper columnist, wrote in 1961 that the plan of the globalists, and people read this all across the country, the plan of the globalists and the CFR was to bring about the gradual surrender of the United States of America and the sovereignty of the United States of America, to surrender it to the United Nations, which is on the fast track for launching their global government. That's where this is all going. And so you need to open your eyes. And then you need to know what your purpose in life is, what God is calling you to do in light of all of these facts. So, the truth of the matter is, this plan, let me give you an illustration of how this plays out. This is going to involve a technological transhumanist revolution with AI, artificial intelligence, leading the way. AI, or artificial intelligence, has already caused the equivalent of a seismic social and economic earthquake of unprecedented proportions, and these earthquakes have already been triggered. They're not earthquakes that are going to be coming down the pike. They're earthquakes that are shaking America, shaking you, and shaking the world right now. Because the AI revolution is giving a kind of technological birthing to millions of new employees that are going to enter the American workforce and the global workforce. But these new employees are not human being employees with human being DNA. This influx of employees that are here to replace human employees are artificially intelligent employees. They're robots, they're clones, they're bots, they're synthetic human beings. And so we are on the precipice of a tidal wave revolution in the employment sector, where robots and artificial intelligence, because they can provide a good or service or product at a far cheaper cost than a human being does. So let me give you just a little taste of what it's going to feel like, and why you need to get educated, you need to seek the Lord, and you need to come out of your comatose state and move into your wake up and smell the coffee state. So we made a call the other day. It was a routine call to an insurance company that we have dealings with. When I got on the phone, I wasn't talking to a human being, but nor was I talking to some help desk in Philippines, or a help desk in South America, or a help desk in the Midwest. No, I wasn't talking to a human being at a help desk, nor was I talking to an overseas human being at a help desk, nor was I listening to a kind of poorly made recording, basically lying to me and telling me how much they value my business, how much they value me as a customer. And because of this unusual moment in time, they are apologizing to me in the recording that, I'm going to have an expected 10, 20, or 30-minute wait. And out of the great kindness of their heart, they're going to offer me that if I punch in my telephone number, they can call me back at a lesser busy time. All of the whole thing is a concoction of just total lies, by the way. Because every day of the week that you call them, the recording is playing the exact same message to you about how this is a unique and unusually busy time. So every day that this company is open for business is a unique and unusually busy time. So that's their perpetual excuse. That's their never-ending excuse for why you're going to wait and wait and wait and listen to stupid music and listen to some stupid recording over and over again with a monotony that must have been birthed in hell. Yeah, I don't like it. Maybe you can tolerate it. I have great difficulty tolerating it because I don't like being lied to. It's always the same excuse, and it's always the same reason, and therefore it's not genuine. Okay, but what happened the other day was totally different than all the traditional robotic dealings I have with big corporations like insurance companies. This time, it was a female voice, which is not neither here nor there, but it was a female voice, but there was a difference in this female voice that was playing. This female voice that I had to endure spoke with much more believability. This female voice that I was listening to spoke with much more lifelike precision, and the precision and lifelikeness of this female voice was so lifelike that it sounded like I was talking to a real human being. And it began with every time I tried to cut off her monologue to me, she would shut me down and talk over me. Not like human beings do, but like something with artificial intelligence would do. And so within about 2 minutes, I recognized that my little business transaction with the insurance company was the wave of the future. I recognized within 3 minutes that I was speaking to an entirely new technological level of robotic calls, that what I was experiencing was an interaction with a higher level robotic voice or machine that uses artificial intelligence to communicate and uses its artificial intelligence to obscure from me and to obscure from all of their customers who call them. The artificial intelligence is being used to hide the fact that you are no longer speaking to a human being. You are speaking to a very clever and a very sneaky, artificially intelligent entity that knows the nuances of a human being, that knows the pacing and pauses in a normal conversation, that knows how to outmaneuver you and dominate the phone call, whether you like it or not. This was a flat-out sneak attack. And I said to myself, 3 minutes, and this is my first debut in a major noticeable way with artificial intelligence. I'm no longer talking to some stupid help desk. I'm no longer talking to a company employee. I'm no longer talking to some foreign help desk. I'm no longer talking to any myriad of recordings. I am now talking to an artificially intelligent robotic entity that has been programmed first and foremost to deceive me into thinking that, gee, Paul, you're a valued customer. How do you like that line? You're a valued customer. And so they give me their artificially intelligent robot, which is far more adept at convincing you that you're talking to a female human being that potentially may have compassion and potentially may do something to help you. Of course, none of that is true. I figured that out just like you did in 3 minutes of listening to artificially intelligent mind control answers, which basically it was the same old shuck and jive routine that I've heard from corporations and their ridiculous excuses, except it was done on a far higher level of precision. So what you can learn from this is what I learned in 3 minutes if you have your eyes open. Just hearing the ominous message in the artificially intelligent entity that was communicating to me, I could foresee in a mad quest for profits these same billionaire, trillionaire families that control our monetary system that they are going to, in the search for ever increasing profits, they are going to terminate incrementally and in a stealth manner. They're going to terminate millions of authentic human employees and covertly replace all these human employees with artificially intelligent robots that are far smarter and far more skillful than just mere corporate recordings. And so that is going to cause a wave of unemployment across America that will negatively impact the economy, and it's going to replace human beings with artificially intelligent AI robots. Now, you can be a victim and not know everything that I'm trying to tell you and more. I'm telling you where this is going in my book, The Day the Dollar Died and the Greatest Battle. I'm telling you what you can do about it. And I try to tell you on this program, the Paul McGUIRE Report, what you can do about it. Because God doesn't want you to sit there like a deer in the headlights, paralyzed by fear. That's the wrong response. God wants you to pray to Him on the basis of the fact that God really does exist, and God wants to supernaturally guide you and lead you and protect you from what is nothing less than an all-out attack against your God-given individuality and your God-given sacredness as an individual human being made in the image of God and using the DNA of God. Okay, so help me get this message out. Visit paulmcguire.us. That's paulmcguire.us. Pray for us. Become alive. Don't sit there in a lethargic state. I'm pointing out to you as best as I can and as simply as I can. I'm pointing out to you a clear and present danger. Now it's your job and our job together to react strategically, law-abiding, and appropriately. And you can help us spread this message by visiting paulmcguire.us and then obey the Lord in whatever the Lord is calling you to do, to be an active part of changing our nation while we still can. God bless you. This is Paul McGUIRE. Visit paulmcguire.us.